My wife, Elaine. Elaine, this is Doug from NPR.
Hi.
Tech support.
Hi, Elaine, and hi, everyone. I think we're actually live. So let's
Thank you, Sweetie.
welcome everyone. Thank you very much. Sorry
Thank
about
you,
the little
baby.
technical glitch. Josh is telling us we're live. Thanks for sticking around with us. That's Mitchell Kezin there. That's his wife, Elaine, that you met. Mitchell, say hi to everybody.
Hello. Hello from the Great White North.
So I'm hoping those of you who are joining us will offer your own questions, comments that you may have. I have plenty of mine. Mitchell, I guess let me start before we jump into whatever other kinds of questions we might be having. I wanted to ask you, tell us what you've missed out on this year because of COVID in terms of what the season is normally like.
Oh, wow.
And what it's been like this year, and just in terms of being able to share Christmas music and share your film.
Right. That's a great question. It's actually been, in one sense, really great because it's meant for the first year since the movie was released in 2014 that I'm not on the road with the film doing similar things like this, but live at a cinema, which always happens. Even though it's 7 years old, I'm invited all over America to show the movie. And last year, in fact, I was away over Christmas Day. I didn't come home till 26th of December.
Wow.
So this year, because of COVID, I'm home for the whole month I've been able to spend it with Elaine, and that's been great. I thought, oh, there's going to be nothing to do. I'm going to have all this free time. I can listen to more Christmas music and it'll be lovely. I've been busier than any other year in the past 7 or 6, which is the result of the fact that there are way more virtual screenings like this one happening. There's like 35 different screenings in various film societies and film clubs and cities and towns across the States, which is wonderful. And so I've been doing a ton of press, and it's as if the movie's coming out just this year. It's amazing.
Wow.
So that's one good thing. And I'm hearing from new fans and old fans who have now made the film part of their own Christmas tradition and ritual, which is far more than any filmmaker could possibly ask for. In terms of what I love to do in the fall, especially, is as soon as Labor Day happens, I start thinking about my Merry Mix and the music I've managed to maybe find between February, early March until August,
right,
which this year hasn't been nearly as much because I haven't traveled at all. Every time I travel, anywhere if I'm invited to any city or town, there's always at least one record store, and there's one dive bar, so I go to both. And I miss that a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
And I also loved to travel through just the border. The Washington State border is just an hour away, and between here and Blaine, Washington, and Bellingham and Seattle, there's about 7 really great record stores. So usually I'll do like 2 trips in the fall around late October, early November, when I know they're going to have their Christmas records out.
Yeah.
So I'll rent a cheap motel room and I'll drive down and I'll stay over a weekend and I'll spend at least 4 hours in every store so I can really dig through.
Wow.
There's one shop that has a room about the size of my office, and it's crammed to the rafters with 45s. And they're not at all organized. They're just in piles. So it literally takes a whole 8 hours. From when they're open to when they close, I'm there digging, trying to find stuff. So I miss that. It sounds like a nightmare for most people, but I love it.
Well, but that makes me wonder, even in a time when there's not a pandemic and just the way we've been digitizing music, that, vinyl is surging, sure, the popularity of it, but I just do wonder if the experience has to have changed over the years. Can you really go into the basement of record stores anymore and find this music in the same way? It seems like the hunt is different.
It's different. It's harder. Yeah, for sure. The moments where I find something great are fewer and few between. If that makes any sense what I just said? Yeah. So, and I don't know if it's that people are keeping their records instead of letting them go now, or flea markets and big churches and those places where you can sometimes find real gold have just stopped taking that stuff. The thing that has surprised me though is that this year, out of any year in the past 5 or more, there are so many great new, brand new, amazing indie alternative Christmas songs that all of us, not just myself, because there are other folks in this game that help me, and we each inform each other of what we think is really cool, and we share it through Twitter and elsewhere. And I'll share those handles with folks who are interested at the end of this, or they can email me and I can let them know. We were all blown away by how much great stuff there was this year. There are so many good records and singles out. It's the proliferation of places like, hubs like Bandcamp, where an artist can release a song fairly, none of it's cheap, but it's cheaper than having to press an actual 45,
Yeah.
And so you can do it independently and just allow people to download it digitally. I mean, I miss, some of them still do vinyl, but what's most important is the song. So whether it's a digital file or on a piece of vinyl, I don't care so much. I just want a good song, a great song. And there have been a number. I've had to really struggle to fit them all on this year's mix because there's just not enough space, which is a great thing. I'm excited about it.
I wanted to ask you about the, maybe you've talked about this before, but one of the things you've talked about is that in the early days when you were trying to pitch this idea for this film to people, that a lot of the times what they would do is they didn't get the concept. What they thought is that you were interested in the kind of kitschy, goofy, you always said the grandma got run over by the reindeer stuff, all those really terrible songs. They didn't understand. When did they finally get it? And what was the pitch that you were trying to make? Because this goes to how kind of lovely you think this idea is. Christmas music is not ironic or kitschy or anything like that. This is a legitimate interest of yours.
Exactly. Yeah. Another great question. Well, I started pitching this in earnest in 2008. The film took 8 years to make. Actually, no, earlier than that. 2005 was my very first meeting with a Canadian broadcaster. And here's what happened. Well, when you're pitching to broadcasters who are basically the folks at TV, the executives at TV networks who are interested in hearing pitches for new programming.
Right.
And you have to deliver what's called a one sheet. So it's like it's a 1 or 2 sided piece of 8.5 by 11 paper that has an image from your film. That's hopefully an image that makes reference or gives a sense of the visual look of the film you're imagining. 1 or 2 paragraphs about the concept in a synopsized form. Maybe a little bit about the different elements of who's in the crew, if they have, if your DOP is some star Canadian DOP. And then bio of myself as the filmmaker, director, producer. So there's that, but that doesn't tell them much. They want to meet you and they want to understand, why are you making this movie? Why should I care? And why now? Like what's important about it? So we're going back 12 years, almost 15 years. I can't believe it. Time for another one.
Yeah, it is.
So my first meeting was with an executive at the Bravo network, which is very different from the Bravo network in America. Bravo is no longer, but it was an arts channel. So they showed theater, dance, programming, short films, dramas, documentaries, you name it. It was a wonderful channel. We really miss it because they gave seed money to a lot of young filmmakers who were new, starting out. And my friend Charlotte was the exec producer at that channel. And I met with her alongside my producer here from Vancouver at the time. I brought with me a portable record player and about 12 records, including Stomp and Tom Connors, who was my favorite Canadian artist. And I thought, I'm going to have time to, so she's read the pitch and she's heard my producer Step talk about it. So she's keen to have a real meeting with us. We get there, it's a big fancy building. We're buzzed in. She comes back, she goes, "Oh man, it's crazy up here. Do you mind if we meet in the cafeteria?" I was like, I imagined waltzing into some big boardroom, and she's there and I can set up my record player and then we're going to talk for like half an hour about the movie and all the ideas I have and everything. No, we have to wait in the cafeteria, which is filled with people because it's like lunchtime. It's super loud and crazy, and people everywhere. There's no privacy. I'm still pretty much, as I said to you the other day, in the Christmas closet, right? I've never met Charlotte before. My producer, knows her well, which was the reason why she was so casual about everything. We literally talked for like, she grabbed a sandwich and a soup, and we grabbed some drink, whatever it was, non-alcoholic, of course. We sit down. She's like, "Okay, Step, tell me a little about it." She didn't even ask me. She said, I just want to hear a bit more." And then she, at the end of his little spiel, she turned to me and she said, I think she said, "Does that sound about right?" Or like how your producer just synopsized the movie you want to make. And I was like, "Yeah," but I said, I just like to understand, like, I'm not talking about Bing Crosby or all those chestnuts that we all love. And there's a reason why they're chestnuts. But I'm talking about other stuff." And I sort of reached down to pick up the records, and I guess she saw them. She's like, "No, I don't need all that." She's like, "It's okay. I get it. I get it." And she's like, that was the end of the pitch.
Huh.
And I was so depressed and dejected. I just felt completely dismissed by her.
Yeah.
And a week later, she phones up Steph and she's like, "I really like this idea. You guys got the money."
Wow.
So it was like $15,000 for just a development. It's called a development deal. So you get 15 grand to be able to shoot a bit of material, cut it together, give some sense of the movie you're going to make. And then at that point, she decides if she's going to commit all her dollars, which was at that time, I think 75,000,
Right.
which was a fraction of our total budget, which I can't reveal, but our budget was in the high hundreds.
Yeah, it was up there. Yeah.
It was up there. So that's just one example. But the other folks, what I did was I came. That was the situation. They all had knee-jerk reactions. They didn't get it. So I decided, no, I look goofy walking around with a armload of records and a record player. I look like I'm some kind of weirdo. So I thought, I'm going to just put together just take my Merry Mix and hand them that and say, okay, once we get down to talking about budget and scope and everything, here, listen to this. These are the kind of songs I'm talking about. Several of them are mentioned in that little synopsis in your one sheet. And once you hear them, you'll understand that this is a real world that exists. And these are amazing songs that other folks need to hear. And this is why I want to make the movie. And I've been doing this for my whole life. And I've been collecting Christmas music for this long. And, I'd love to play some for you, but you've got the CD. So, let us know if that makes you understand the film better. And usually, most often they got it and they were excited. Once they heard the music and they got that, they were excited and they came on board. But that took 4 years
Forever to
to
get
raise
it.
all the money.
Well, we're getting some questions from people who are
Cool.
joining us.
Hello,
Christiana,
everyone.
and by the way, do you want to say something about the fact that you may be giving away some music?
Well, yeah, here we go. These are all the names. I'm going to put them inside this hat later.
Okay,
at
good.
the end of this session, and we're going to
stick around.
We're going to give away a whole bunch of stuff.
Cool. Okay.
DVDs, soundtracks, Merry Mixes, some vinyl. It's going to be great.
Great. All right. So stick around, folks. And let me ask some questions. Christiana has a question. She says, "What is a Christmas song that is not mentioned in the film that you think people should listen to?" I mean, there's so much, obviously, that you couldn't get to in the film. So, but just pick a one or two that you think people should listen to,
Okay,
all the time.
I'm going to pick one that I just posted about today because it's an older song by a really cool band that I love. And it's just so particularly great for this season we're going through. It's about wanting to stay connected to your loved ones. It's called All I Want for Christmas. It's by a band called the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
They're great.
I sent your producer Christy that song to use as the outro for your show, and I'm not sure if it was used or the other one I sent her was used, but that's a great one. So the band is Yeah Yeah Yeahs, like YEAH, YEH, YEHS. They're wonderful. Yeah. And then there's not just a song, but a whole record. There's a Canadian artist who I've loved for a long time. His name is Chili Gonzalez. He's out of Montreal. And this year he released his first Christmas record in mostly originals, a few carols that he covers. It's called A Very Chilly Christmas. And he's a genius. He's a musical prodigy. He's a genius. And he also collaborated on that record with Feist and Jarvis Cocker. And there's a song on there called Snow is Falling in Manhattan that is just so sublime and beautiful and melancholy that it just brought me to tears when I first heard it. It's just gorgeous. And it's on my Merimix this year. I played it on my Sirius XM show yesterday. It's amazing. So those are just two, but gosh, there's thousands.
Yeah.
There's
It'll get you started.
Great question. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah. Thanks, Christiana. So Maggie wants to know,
Christian,
she said, I loved the end when you were giving people albums. Do you have stories of how you picked different albums for the people you give these as gifts?
Oh, what a great question. Okay, so I'm going to just note this because special prizes are going to really, really good questions. What's her name?
This is Maggie.
Maddie?
Maggie,
okay. The only person that I think the other people, I can't even remember which albums I gave them. But I remember I gave the woman from the Free Design, whose name is escaping me right now. That's terrible. And I gave Andy Surzan the same record, but different. I gave her the full Stomp and Tom Connors LP, and I gave Andy a 45 because Andy loves 45s. Okay. So Andy was one of the collectors featured in the film. So both of them got Stomp and Tom Connors Christmas records. And Stomp and Tom Connors was a legendary folk country western singer here in Canada. He's from the East Coast. He's from Newfoundland. An amazing person, amazing patriot, an amazing legendary artist. And he was on board to be in the movie after a long slog trying to get him to be involved. And then he got sick and passed away of cancer. And we couldn't make it work, which was so sad because he has one of my top 3 Christmas songs. If I had to choose them, one would be his song called Down on Christmas. It's nothing like the title. It's a hilarious, upbeat, really fun little number about everything that goes wrong for this guy on Christmas morning. But it's really funny and charming and just amazing. So that's Down on Christmas by Stomp and Tom Connors. So that's the record I gave to Andy in that sequence. And I gave, I thought by now I'd remember her name, but it's escaping me. She's the sister of in the band The Free Design, and I'm so ashamed I can't remember her name right now. This is embarrassing, but it'll come to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. So Ben and another viewer, they're wondering, why is it that it seems like collectors are white men? What do you make make of that? Is it true? Is that what you found? Most of these guys are just white.
Older white guys
dudes,
not in really great shape. Yeah. It was more true back when I started making this movie. I really, really tried to get some females into the mix of the collectors cabal. I reached out to the only 3 that I knew of, and trust me, I scoured the world because I have hardcore Christmas collector friends in Amsterdam and other places in Europe and in the South of America and pretty much everywhere. And we knew of 3 women who had sort of made their presence known. And I reached out to them. I asked them to become involved in that sequence. And each of the people in that sequence, they filmed themselves because it was towards the end of the shoots and we didn't have money to travel. And I wanted it to be more intimate. So I wanted them to film themselves. And so I gave each of them a list of instructions and I explained exactly how I wanted the framing to be so they would all fit in the same way. So I had drawings and I said, okay, once you're set up, here's how it needs to be shot. And here's how far you need to be in the frame. Blah. And I sent all that information out to all the collectors. and the only folks who managed to get me back footage by the deadline were in the movie. So the three women unfortunately weren't able to manage to get me footage. They were upset about not being able to do it, but they just couldn't manage it. So now, here we are 10 years later, well, 15 years later. I know of many more, and some of them are Twitter friends, and we follow each other, and we trade tapes and mixes and songs together through the year. But it's still pretty, I don't know, records and record collecting is still a very male-dominated world. I don't know why that is. I really don't. But
yeah, but it's a good question. It does sound like
a great question. Yeah,
it does sound like you should do a little sequel here. There's the, it'd be fun to update this.
I want to, and I have a few ideas. The next one would not involve me at all. I wouldn't be in it. It would be more about the process, creating an original Christmas song. So I would follow a really cool band from start to finish, like the writing process through recording and releasing and all that. That's one idea. And also to explore some other genres that I didn't touch in Jingle Bell Rocks, like blues and more like Hawaiian and exotica and
the whole, you could do a whole film about Hawaiian Christmas music.
I could, yes, I would love to.
So here's a question from Chris. He's a fellow filmmaker, says, and as a fellow filmmaker, he's thinking about the nightmare that it is getting rights to music. So he's wondering, is getting the music rights, or was it, I guess, for this particular thing, was it a nightmare, or did people, as Chris says, get into the Christmas spirit and give you a break on the rights? And like that? Well, how was that?
I'll try and there's a longer answer to that question, but I know we don't have time, so I'll take the route of trying to make it a shorter answer. It was initially a nightmare, and what was really scary for me as a filmmaker was that my producers decided, I told them who I wanted in the movie, who I had reached out to, who I still wanted to get. And at the time we had all the money and we were starting production. I didn't have Wayne Coyne. And I didn't have Run DMC, Rev Run, Joseph Simmons, but I had everyone else. No, I didn't even have John Waters then.
Wow.
So my pitch video had Elvis and Dr. Demento as the stars, which didn't inspire a lot of confidence in some broadcasters because they didn't know who they were. Later, when I had Rev Run, which he came first beyond the other two, then people started to pay more attention, because we were raising money throughout the period where we were also filming. And this was weird. I said earlier how I tried filming interviews outside of the Christmas season and they didn't work out. We did that with about 3 different people, and we got the footage back and it was just dull and boring and awful. And I knew it at the time, but I convinced myself it was going to be fine because we were spending so much money traveling and staying in hotels and getting a crew. And so we burned through a lot of money and we had to reshoot all of those near to Christmas time. So we had the craziest schedule where we'd be shooting November, December, because also some of the artists had, like Dr. Demento only records his show at Christmas time. I wasn't going to ask him to do a fake show in July just for the movie, right? I had to capture him actually recording the show for that year. So we did that. Lowe was only performing at Christmas time once. So that we did that one together. So we did Demento, Lowe, and Elvis one Christmas. Then we were in hiatus for 10 months. And then we did, the next 3, the next Christmas season. And then we waited 10 months and we shot the next 3. Then, so it was like 4 years of filming, but it was only 4 years times 2 months. And in between there, we were raising money and editing, and I was chasing down Wayne Coyne, who took 4 years to finally not agree to be in the movie, but for me to pin him down and say, are you going to do this? Because he expressed interest right away, but I couldn't get a commitment. I couldn't get an answer like, okay, when do we show up at your door with a crew and you'll answer questions?
Yeah, you'll sit down on the floor and talk to us.
That's right. That's funny. He said to me, the directive was from his DOP when I got there and we were setting up, and I said, okay, so because he lived, this is a funny detail, and I'm kind of straying off your question. I'll answer the rest of your question in a second. But it's interesting. So Wayne Coyne lives in Oklahoma City, dicey neighborhood, but it's like surrounded by barbed wire, and all the homes are connected. So it's called the compound. And and you know, a few of the homes are for like visiting friends and musicians when they're collaborating on a project. One home was owned by his chief, George Salisbury, who's the one who does all the filming of all the videos and all the graphics. And then Wayne has his spaceship house, which is insane,
Yeah.
and has all these trap doors and weird place. You get lost immediately. And then underneath all this is a huge space where all the props, all those bubbles that you see at their shows, the guns and everything, it's all under there. So I get there, and George escorts me to the rehearsing room where that interview was shot, and he said, "So what do you want to do with the visually with this?" I said, "Oh well," I said, "I saw," and so like a year or two before the interview with Wayne, they had released this silver embryo Christmas ornament. And in the video that they made, the advertising video that they made for the ornament that was for sale on their merch site, Wayne did a little video, and he had these crazy dark, like Seuss-like bright neon trees behind him in the video. It was straight out of Whoville.
Yeah.
And Dr. Grinch. And I was like, well, I'd love it if we could get those trees and we could put those behind him. And George was like, and George had like two assistants with him, sort of lurking in the wings. And he just pointed to them. He said, "Go get those trees." So within like 15 minutes, they brought up all these trees. They brought a few. I said, I want some. He told me they had some spinning lights. And I said, "Bring those up." And so they decorated the whole set for me. And then he said, "Oh, by the way, Wayne likes to sit down on the floor these days. So you got to do the interview that way." I said, "Okay, well, yeah, sure, that's fine. Whatever Wayne wants, I'm happy to oblige because I'm so thrilled I'm here with him." So, what was the original question?
We're back to music rights. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh my God. So
I got you off
sorry,
track.
folks. Sorry. Oh, so music rights. So it was a nightmare initially because my producers decided, this is where I was going. They decided that we were going to shoot the whole movie with characters who sang certain specific songs without getting the rights to the songs first. So we knew we had them. So in case something went wrong, we couldn't get the rights to that song. None of that time and effort and that footage of that person was spent. Instead, we were forced with, okay, I love Bob Duro. I love spending time with Bob Duro. But if we can't get Miles Estate to agree to use that song, we're hooped, and the whole movie falls apart because it's Wayne's song and Bob's song were the two most important songs to me for the whole movie.
Totally.
Because Bob's was the first song that really got me started on collecting original Christmas music, and Wayne's was the more modern one that really spoke to me. And I wouldn't have made the movie without either of those two guys. But we shot all this footage, and I'm like, what if we don't get this? What if we don't get the right? And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll sort it out. I was like, oh my God. And the hardest song to clear was Miles Davis. Not because
that does not surprise me, Mitch, but that doesn't surprise me.
I know, but it was about a particular executive in the LA branch just being obstructionist and just didn't even bother to watch the movie or we cut together a sequence. We cut together the whole sequence with the animation and everything to show them all. Here's where we, and I wrote like 5 pages about why the song was important to me, what it meant, why it needed to be in the movie. And we sent them the sequence and the clips. And I fortunately had an ally in the Sony world who works with Bob Dylan and is one of the consultants to the Miles Estate for anything that gets released of his work. And he turned out to become a good friend, and he fought for me, and he's the reason that we ended up finally getting the deal. But what we did was, I can't reveal the cost, but it was way, way cheaper than if we paid normal going rates for each song. There's 32 songs in the film. Some are highlighted, some are just a bit in the background. It would have cost easily over $500,000 just for the music. We did something called, as a filmmaker, you should know about this, and you maybe already do. We did something what's called a Fair Nations deal, where every artist, we had a set amount of money, and we said we're going to split this across all the artists, and this is done in documentary film a lot. when you have a music project that of this kind of scope, and everyone agrees to the same flat fee because they believe in the project and they can see the worthiness of it, and they can see that they don't want to ask for more money than the other. They're not allowed to. They agree to it or they don't.
Yeah.
And it's a 10% of what their normal fee would be, if not less, maybe 5%. And so
But it's not nothing.
That was a, pardon me?
But it's not nothing.
It's not nothing. It's still a lot,
right. Yeah.
but it's not nothing.
Yeah.
And just one other side, Run DMC, through a favor because of Bill Adler's involvement in the movie, they gave us the video for nothing, which was really fucking nice because, oops, sorry.
That's okay. These people.
Which was really nice because that would cost 50 grand easily for anyone else.
Yeah.
Great question. Sorry about the long answer. Hopefully that was
good. Chris, there you go. I love this question from Rashawn, who asks, so when you are looking for searching for Christmas music,
yeah,
Rashawn wants to know, is it the art on the cover of the album? Is it the musicians or the producers that draw you to certain records? Like what is it? Like what's the thing that catches your eye? Is it the artwork? Is it I mean, surely in some cases it's the musician, but like, is there a particular thing?
Right. Who is that again? Sorry.
So that is Rashawn.
Rashawn. Okay.
RISSA.
Great question. It's a number of different things depending on whether it's a full album, in which case it's sometimes about the cover. But I didn't used to do this, but once I met Andy Surzan and he told me his process, which was, you saw him in the movie. He takes out his little portable record player, he sets it up, and he plays the first few seconds or a minute of the record.
Yeah.
I wasted so much money just buying things on hope. It's like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. It's $5, and I got 20 of these, and I'm like, that's $100. Oh man, okay, I'll take a chance. I wasted a lot of money that way. So as soon as I realized there were portable record players, his is the Newmark. That's the one I also bought, but you can buy cheaper ones. So I now, everywhere I go, I keep that with me. So I'll go digging for records. I'll have my big stack that I'll just, as soon as I see something, I'll just grab it. I'll put it in a stack. And then when I'm finished going through the whole lot of Christmas, then I'll go to that stack and I'll whittle that down to about half, just by looking at not just who produced it, but the song titles is really important. Is it all covers of Christmas songs? That's not so interesting to me anymore. It used to be, but at this point, 30 years hence, it's not really that interesting. So I'll probably give that one back. If there's some interesting song titles and some original songs, I'll definitely keep it. And then I'll take them out. I'll look at the condition. And I'll play a little. I can tell within 10 seconds if I'm going to really love it or not, or if it's worth buying.
Wow.
That's for LPs. So anyone can afford, if they got the money to release an LP, they have the money to hire a decent graphic artist. So the cover is kind of meaningless unless it's super whacked and wild and weird. Then I'll probably gravitate to it. But it's more about the song titles are the original, and also where was the record produced? If it's produced anywhere in the South of America, like Mississippi, Louisiana, anywhere there, I'll buy it because and also the date. If it's before 1980, before mid 70s even. If it's from the 50s, 60s, or early 70s, I'll buy it for sure. Because that's where the best stuff was done and recorded that I don't know about, or I don't own yet. With singles, it's even more fun because I've started now after this long. I know certain labels just by heart that other songs I've bought in the past on that label have been great. So chances are this one's going to be. But again, it's about looking at the song title. If it's an interesting original song title, chances are, it's not a cover of Jingle Bells or Christmas song, which sometimes you get on the flip side. They have an original on one side, they have a cover on the other, which can be interesting. So it's like, oh wow, definitely buy that. So if the song title is interesting, and then I'll look at the label and I'll look and see where was it produced, where is this being issued from. Sometimes there's scant info, but there's always a phone number and an address to tell you where it's come from. And sometimes the less info, the more intriguing it is. And at that point, that's when I'll listen to it and just know. It's very seldom these days that I'll buy something sight unseen without listening to it.
Yeah.
Or not sight unseen, ear unheard. Ear unheard. Great question. Thank you.
Great question, Rashawn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. EC wants to know. So EC says music on vinyl is too expensive to press. CDs are outdated. Most people putting out music are putting it on platforms like Bandcamp and SoundCloud. So how do you sufficiently monitor those platforms to know just what kind of independent music is coming out? I mean, you can't just go into the basement of a record shop and find the stuff that's actually out there. So like, what are you looking for when you're trying to find this stuff? Because you have to, because these days, as EC points out, it's challenging.
There's thousands and thousands of new songs just this season that were released on through Bandcamp. I rely on my cohorts who are nothing to do with COVID or the pandemic. My cohorts in this game, my fellow hardcore collector friends, of which there are many, and there's like 6 of them who are so deeply into this. And again, I'll share all this with anyone who wants to email me. They do a lot of this hard grafts, all this work for me. I just rely on them to tell me what is interesting, and I'll go to their website and I'll look at what they've posted about and talked about, and I know it's going to be great because I know them and I know their tastes. And that's where a lot of the songs from this year's Merry Mix have come from. Otherwise, it's just hard labor staying up until the middle of the night listening to songs on Bandcamp and just Googling Xmas the year or whatever. It saddens me that we're going so digital and that there aren't, but it's also this year it's the reality. No one could possibly would be foolish to go into a studio with all kinds of people and invite the potential of sickness, and so I get it. Next year, will it be the same? I hope not. I hope some people start releasing on vinyl. I mean, it's just so much nicer to have a piece of vinyl, but I'm an old fart, so I'm biased, and I'm really attached to having that item that is in my collection that I can covet and look at and go, oh man, I want to hear that again. Just taking it out of the sleeve and looking at the cover and putting it on, it's so nice, instead of just hitting play on iTunes. It's like, I sound like an old man. I know.
No. It's great.
I hope I answered your question. I didn't quite answer it very well, but
no, it's great.
That's kind of a tough one because there's so many bad. It's like, I don't know, 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 30 that are great versus not so good, because a lot of people they rush through and they just record something because they hope it's going to land on Bandcamp and get some traction. It's a Christmas song, but it's a cover and it's just not even interesting at all.
That's a good question, EC. Thanks. Let's do one more and then we'll give away some stuff.
Oh, that sounds great.
So this comes from Robert. It's a great question. So Robert is confessing his guilty pleasure Christmas song. He says he has a weird soft spot for John Denver and the Muppets. That's his guilty pleasure. That's quite
okay. Those are great. Great albums.
Well, what he wants to know is, what is your guilty pleasure Christmas song? One that is pop traditional stuff that for whatever reason still resonates. Not the obscure things that you have to go digging for. Like, what is just pop Christmas stuff? Robert wants to know, what's your guilty pleasure?
I have a few, but the one that everyone kids me about and they can't believe this is the case. And I mean, before I tell you, like, I love Burl-Ives' Holly Jolly Christmas. That's one of my favorites. I love the Henry Mancini Christmas record, because that was one of the albums that was in the tiny, maybe 10 or 12 records total that were in my parents' collection. I love anything by the Living Strings for the same reason. Living Strings alone, Living Strings with voices, Living Strings with guitar. Like, they had like 5 or 6 different variations of Christmas albums. So I love all those. But my guilty pleasure is this is I don't admit this very often, so you got me, but I'm going to answer because you're here and you're asking. Is Paul McCartney's Wonderful Christmas Time, which is a song that I know so many people hate, but here's why. I was, I don't know, maybe 12, I guess I was 13. I just turned 13. I was allowed to go down. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is a province over from where I live now. And I was allowed to go downtown to Christmas shop for the first time on my own. I took the bus down there, or maybe my mom dropped me off. I can't remember. I think she dropped me off and I was going to take a bus home. It was like a big deal. And there's a mall that's not, there's no, it's just pedestrian traffic only. And it's called 8th Avenue Mall. So I'm down there, it's Christmas time. The mall is decorated with, it's just beautiful. It's all decorated up. It's nighttime. It's like a Thursday or a Wednesday night. It's early evening, like 7-ish. So it's still dark, but it's not 12 midnight. So there aren't like the riffraff around. I'm walking around and I'm like the Hudson's Bay store was there. So I was shopping for my father and my mom and my sister and my 2 brothers. And at some point I came out of one of the stores in the main mall and there was a little pizza shop and they had a speaker sitting outside and it was playing that song. So this is right when that song came out. So whatever year that came out, it must have been around 72 or 73. I can't remember. It was Paul McCartney and Wings when he was with me, I think.
Not that long after the Beatles had broken up.
That's right. Not that long after. So it was a new song at that time. So that's why it was being played on the radio. And that song came on. And I could hear it. I was like blocks away from this store, this pizza shop, and I heard this, and I was like, it was new and fresh and interesting. And so I started walking towards it and getting excited and getting a little, at this point in time, I was starting to pay attention to Christmas music in the same way that the Nat King Cole song had affected me. I was wanting that experience again. I wanted to feel that deeply about another song again. And this was like, maybe this is a chance for that to happen. So I was running, and I got closer. The song got louder and louder, and I just stood outside the shop. I didn't even buy a pizza slice. I just stood there and listened to the whole song, and I thought it was really cool. And then I went shopping, took the bus home, and I had no idea who it was. I didn't know it was Paul McCartney. I was 13 years old.
Huh.
And I was like, fuck, how can I hear that? I want to know where I can get that song. Like I wanted to buy it. Like I wanted to find it again. So I started really paying attention to the radio, and sure enough, the station I loved at the time played it, and they mentioned who it was, and I was like, Paul McCartney. I was like, oh, from the Beatles. Yeah, okay. So I wrote it down, and I went to the local record shop that I always shopped at. And they had the 45, and I bought it, and that's been the soft spot for me ever since. No one's ever asked me that question. That's a great question. Thank you.
It's a really good question, Robert. Thanks very much. Okay, thanks to all of you who have asked questions.
I'll tell you what. Here's what I want to do.
Yes,
here's what I want to do.
Take it away.
I appreciate everyone who asked questions who didn't get to have them answered. So if you want to email me questions, I'll send you something really cool in return. So we'll figure that out. I can get either, I think the Utah Film Center has their contact info or whatever. We'll figure it out. But don't worry if you didn't get your question answered now. I appreciate it, and we'll get you something